Okay, after these great use cases and, use cases from the customers, and one more technical presentation that should give you some insights about how what kind of challenges we have to tackle or to solve if we come to backup of our own cloud solution system. And therefore, the presentation is called Backup Strategy for S3 because the main challenges come from storing and backupping object storage. And also, this is a kind of user experience that we made up or that we came up if we had to tackle these problems. Okay, so the presentation is split into two parts. First is about the experience about how to back up a solution like Cloud SeaTable IO. What are the main challenges? So I want to give you some background information. And then I want to show our concrete backup solution because I hope that this gives you some insights about if you're facing the same problems. Okay, so first let's start with some theory or some background knowledge. The goal of S3 backup is to save data. Everybody has some data that has to be saved, that has to be protected. And in former times, it was mainly about, backup was about hardware failure. So you had some disks, you had some hard drives, they might, fail, and then your data is lost, therefore you have to make some copies. In the newer times, ransomware attacks or hacker problems were just rising up, so backup is a much broader topic. So you have to not only to make sure to protect against hardware failure, you really have to protect your data against various threatenings or various problems from ransomware to hackers and even to a fire in a data center like OVH, which had a fire it was France where, customers who just stored all the data in one data center of OVH, they had a huge problem because the data was lost because the data center was just on fire. Of course, there are other goals. So not the main goal is to protect the data, but other goals like, okay, you want to have low cost, you want to have low complexity, and you have to consider always how long does it take, how much time does it take to back up the real data, and how much time does it need to restore the data? Because most of the times it's only focused about, okay, I want to back up my data and it should be fast. It should be just be immediately, or it should be just in the background and I don't care about the time to backup. But what really could become a problem if you have a huge amount of data and it takes weeks or days to restore. I think yesterday we heard from University of Heidelberg, I think they just migrate data from one storage to another, or from tape. So you restore it back from tape, and how long does it take? Weeks? Or month? Okay. Okay. So time to restore might be a topic, but for me it's just a side topic. Okay. So how does typically a file backup works? Well, you have in the end a bunch of files, and after a certain period of time you have new files, or you might have updated files, and then you have a kind of backup software. I don't want to put any names in here, and typically this backup software creates any kind of backup. And today I would say it's standard that you create snapshots. Snapshots would mean that you can jump back to any point in time and have a complete set of files of that current moment. That means, as you can see over here, I just created a snapshot on the 13th, and then 2 minutes later, okay, it's probably a bad example, but okay. But every line, every backup is a snapshot, and you can just jump into every snapshot and can get the data from this moment. So, in fact, the backup software provides all the logic. With the selection of a backup solution, you decide what kind of feature set you have in your backup software. And here comes the point. With the rising of S3 as object storage, S3 was observed by most of the people just as backup target. So you use S3 as backup target for for a lot of reasons. First of all is high availability. The S3 providers just tell you, okay, we have an availability of 99.99999%, so your data is secure. You have typically S3 is scalable. You can just put any amount of data, it just grows and grows and grows. You don't have to care about file size, about disk size limits. So my backup software has my backup hardware has only 3 terabytes, so I have to make sure that my backup fits in it. This problem just, vanished with the use of object storage like S3. You have high performance. S3 is super fast. Also, it's in most of the cases, it's just spread or copied to different zones. So you have a super solution. So in fact, basically, S3 is a super great solution for creating backups. So therefore, consequently, most of the backup solutions support S3 as a target. So if you have a bunch of files, no matter what, and you want to save it, to store it, to archive it, S3 is a perfect solution. But what is if your data that you want to save are not files, but instead you have S3? So in our case, for Cloud SeaTable AO, this is the situation we want to back up. We have 4 different buckets, so S3 object storage buckets, and we have just a very few amount of database dump and config files. To give you just a short estimation about our current setup, we have 3 buckets, file system, commits, and blocks, to store all the documents and pictures that the people save in their picture and image columns. So the first 3 buckets are to store the file and the picture columns. And right now we have more than 6 million objects in the file system bucket, for example, with a total size of about 10 gigabyte. And for example, the blocks is to store all the data. We have not so many objects, but we have a huge amount of data. And so the challenge, well, in comparison, just look over here, our database dumps and our config files, okay, size is so limited, it's no problem. So this is not the real challenge. The real challenge is how to back up these huge amount of data and these amount of objects. And here comes the point. Most of the backup solutions, well, I know, does not support to back up S3. They use S3 as backup target, but they're not capable to save or to back up S3 as a source. And well, if you Google for, I don't know, why is there no backup solution for S3, you get different answers. First answer is, well, if you're using S3 as source, you don't need a backup because you have high availability like 99.9999%, but for sure this is just mad because you need a backup. Even S3 could be, well, just damaged, or you can accidentally delete the files, or somebody could delete it by on purpose. So no backup solution, well, is definitely no solution for backupping S3. Okay, then other people just proposed, yeah, well, you can just initialize a replication from one S3 bucket to another S3 bucket. Yeah, sounds great. Okay, you have your S3 buckets in Frankfurt, and then you have another zone in Zurich, for example. You just make a replication. So you have a really one-to-one synchronization. But well, what happens if you by accident delete on the left bucket some files, and then it's synchronized, and the files are also deleted on another backup, or on the backup bucket? So might also not be the solution. Okay, next proposal would be if you just Google for it, well, use AWS backup. Yeah, sounds good, but the problem is, what is if you don't want to use AWS? AWS backup is a great solution. You can explicitly say, okay, how many copies do I want to have? How many zones do I want to use? How many lifecycle, or how long does the data should be blocked or secured? I don't know what, but the problem is you have to use AWS. So what is if you don't want to use AWS? Okay, so this is also not an option. Okay, now comes to the last point. The recommended option is to use S3 versioning. So what does it mean? S3 versioning means that as soon as you change an object in the object storage or delete it, it's not really deleted, it's just get a deletion mark. Or if you change it, it just creates a new version. And you can see it over there. This is a kind of view into a bucket, into a S3 bucket. And here you can see how many versions I already have, or if a file is already deleted. And this brings me to the point. S3 buckets, or S3 object storage, is an intelligent file system. It does not only provide you storage, where you can just push data in it, it provides you with information, with intelligence and additional features. And these features are like versioning, like you can see over here. You can have a feature like object lock. That means you can say or tell the storage system, this object is locked and cannot be manipulated. It cannot be deleted. It cannot be changed. It's locked. Or you have lifecycle management, where you can say, I want to keep deleted files for 1 month. And after 1 month, the file is automatically deleted. So you don't have to care about it. So this is a feature in the file system, well, file system is wrong, in the object storage. The object storage brings intelligence and makes the storage, more useful. Then you have IAM access policies. For example, this is just a screenshot from Exascale, where you can define permission rights, what you can do with your bucket. So if you're only allowed to write data in, but not to delete it. Or you can limit it to some resources, like, okay, only use buckets with, for example, that starts with SeaTable dedicated. So IAM access policies are kind of, you have credentials, and these credentials have a inbound permission, and with this permission you can perfectly define what is capable, what this IAM key is capable of. So, next problem, sound great. Okay, so if you have S3 object storage and you have all those features, this might look like a perfect backup solution. So just take one bucket and have another bucket, and then you activate versioning or object lock and combination of that, and everything is fine. But the main problem is, most of the European providers of S3 storage just provide you not with S3 storage, but S3 compatible storage. And what does it mean? You have to take a very close look. What does it mean? Because, for example, if you take Strato, a German provider, they provide S3 storage, and they call it S3 compatible storage, like high drive, S3 high drive. But the problem is, S3 compatible means they are read-write compatible to S3, but nothing more. It could be more, but it does not have to be more. So if you just order S3 high drive from Strato, you get an S3 compatible backup storage, but all these features like versioning, object lock, lifecycle management is not available. You cannot activate, you cannot use it. Therefore, so it's just a dump object storage without any feature or logic in it. So Strato is not a good solution. So just have a look on Ionos. They provide S3. They also provide versioning, but IAM access policies, it's just in beta. It's still in beta, so it's not granted that you have all the possibilities to define, for example, to limit for specific buckets. And if you go on and go on, so the major problem is S3 compatible object storage could mean totally different things. You have to be very careful what to use. And this brings me to the point, this is one of the reasons why we choose Exascale for Cloud SeaTable for backup and also for the production system, because they have most of the features S3 is providing, and we can use them. So they provide functions like versioning, IAM access policies, and object storage. Okay, this is all background information. Now we come to the real challenge. So the real challenge is, as I said, we have 4 buckets for files and images, for the base snapshots, and we have some database dumps and config files, and we all want to backup them. Okay, and we decide this is the concrete way how we backup them. We have 2 data centers from Exascale. We have the data center in Frankfurt, and we have the data center in Munich. And what we do is we copy with a sync command all the objects or all the content that is on the Frankfurt data center to the Munich data center. So we just use rclone sync, and that means if a file or an object is deleted here, the object is also deleted here. But here comes the point. We activated versioning on this data center. That means every time we delete something on the left-hand side, it's not really deleted here. It's really deleted on the production system, because if somebody wants to delete a file, well, it's deleted, no problem. But the version or the object with just a deletion flag is still always in the backup data center. And also, we use only IAM keys that are capable of writing data into it. They are not allowed to delete anything. So that means if this is the production system, like a dedicated system for a customer or a Cloud SeaTable, it's allowed to write data in, but it's not allowed to change anything into these buckets. And this is possible due to this IAM access rights. Okay, how does the backup solution looks in the end? Well, as I said, we have to use rclone to copy all this million of objects and different files. But the huge problem was it took quite a time. If we run just an rclone sync command on 6 million objects, it took about 4 to 6 hours. And it was too slow. we just wanted to improve this. And therefore, we tweaked rclone a little bit, because rclone, if rclone copies a file from left to right, it compares the MD5 checksum. That means you have a file, it creates the checksum on the left, it creates the checksum on the right, and then it compares the checksum. But generating the checksum of 6 million objects takes a lot of time and takes a lot of CPU power. Therefore, we disabled it and just said, okay, it's enough if the file have the same size. And this increases the synchronization from hours to minutes. So in the end, every sync command takes about 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, next thing we implemented is we also want to know if the backup is really working. So for what happens if the sync job is just not running and we didn't recognize? So therefore, we implemented a so-called health check system. This picture just shows it. We can send commands to this health check service, like, okay, now a process started it, and now a process is just finished. And we can send also different informations, and as soon as either this health check defined in here is not running, it sends a command like an email or an SMS or I don't know what, or if the command is not finished in a specified period of time. So for example, if the process is not finished after 1 hour, it also sends an alert, or well, if it's not running at all. So this brings me to the point, the complete backup of our cloud system I/O the complete backup script for backupping cloud SeaTable I/O can be summarized with these lines of code. So we just start with the first line is, okay, we send a start command, the first start ping to this our health check server, just telling them, okay, now we started with the backup. Then we just execute the rclone sync for the data. Then we do this, well, and then we do another rclone, but this time we just get the size and the number of objects on the origin, and also the size and the number of objects in the target. And in the end, we compare these. These compare size is just a function of comparing, do I have 6 million objects on the left, and do I have the same number of objects on the right, and do I have the same size on the left and the right? And we just allow that we have a kind of mismatch, because just imagine you run this first rclone sync, and in the time during this syncing process, new files are created. This will mean that the next time this rclone size can deliver more objects or more size than you have at the moment you started the syncing process. So we allow a little bit of deviation. And in the end, as soon as everything is just synced, we just send another command to our health check server sending, okay, everything is fine. And in the end, we send this to our health check server, telling them, okay, we have synced data, commits, blocks, file system, and storage. And you can see we have the number of objects, we have the size, and this is the source, and this is the target. And we compare the number of the count on the left and the right. We compare the size of the total of the objects, and in the end we say, okay, either it's okay or either it's not okay. And if everything is okay, the health check does not send any message. If something is wrong, it sends out a notification via email and SMS. So, and I think with this basically easy backup procedure, we deal with all the things. It means we can, hardware failure is no problem, deletion, ransomware, hackers, even a fire in one of the databases of Exascale is no problem, because we have a really duplicate of data into data centers. And also the other goals are fulfilled from my point of view, because we have low cost, we only have 2 S3 buckets. We have a low complexity. Before we had a much longer backup solution, but we could reduce it just to about 20 size of code of a cron job. The time to backup, as I said, you can see it over here. The total duration of a backup run is about 60 minutes. And the real synchronization of terabyte of data is just about 10 to 20 minutes. A lot of time is used for the comparison of the size of the total of the objects. Okay, time to backup is very fast, and time to restore is super, super fast. Well, because just imagine this data center is not working anymore. We just use a new server, a new VM anywhere in the world, and directly connect to the backup buckets. and we change these buckets from backup to production. So we don't have to restore. We just switch our backup to a production system. So time to restore is, well, we need the time to set up a new virtual machine, to just install Docker, to install SeaTable with Docker Compose up-d, and then we just change the configuration files to point at these backup buckets, and restore is just done in no time. Okay, but I don't want to hide. With this backup solution, there's a new risk, and the new risk is everything comes down to this IAM key. There must be a root IAM key which gives, well, access to everything. If you have this master IAM key, you can delete every bucket. You have the permission to create new buckets, but also you can deactivate versioning, you can deactivate every functionality, and you can even delete everything. So the new challenge is not losing your data, not protecting your data. The problem is how to protect this. How to make sure that enough people in your company know this, but not too much that as soon as they leave the company, there's a huge problem or something. So this management of the super secret keys is a huge challenge. It's a new challenge from my point of view. Okay, and this brings me to the point, what are the learnings we made from this creation of this backup process? First of all is backup of S3 is totally different than backupping just files, a bunch of files, because the logic moves from the backup software to the storage system. And therefore, you have to choose a backup provider or an S3 provider that gives you the necessary feature that you can build up such a backup solution. Because, as I said, this would not be useful if you use it with Strato. In Strato, you cannot activate versioning, you cannot activate object lock, you even have IAM keys, you just have one credential for everything, so there's no protection at all. So Strato would not be a helpful player. So only a few infrastructure providers in Europe offer the required features. The Americans, AWS or something, well, it was the marketing leader, it provides everything. So you have to look very carefully, choosing the right one. And also, as soon as you get millions of objects, time becomes more critical. That means if you have to sync millions of objects, you have to think about how can we reduce the time that is necessary to back up and also to restore. Yeah, and as I said, the new problem is IAM management becomes a new threat, a new problem that you have to tackle, how to make sure that this IAM key is not lost or gets into the wrong hands. And well, creating a good backup solution for S3 buckets is not just like installing a new software or just booking AWS. It requires some thinking, it requires some time to test and to make it really your backup solution. Thank you very much. This was my findings or my experience with S3 buckets. I'm sorry, it was very technical. I hope I didn't annoy you, but you might have some questions. Now you know how we back up Cloud SeaTable.io. It might be also relevant for you. So any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.